So far, we have looked at what a niche is, why you need one, and what a massive difference it makes when you've got one. And today, we're going to talk about the kind of language that we need to use when we're marketing. Now, there are, I talk about this idea of scales. On this side, we have all our delivery skills. So our coaching, our practitioner certificates, our NLP, our Gestalt, our transactional analysis skills, all of the tools that we use when we're sitting in front of a client, they sit on this side of our scales. And these scales are the two skill sets we need to run a financially viable coaching business. On this side of the scales are the skills we need to create the opportunities to do that delivery. And this is the side that the coaching revolution sits on. And this is my kind of zone of genius, if you like, very specifically client acquisition for coaches. Now, why does language matter? What am I talking about when I say make sure you use the right language? One of the things that coaches resist really, really hard, really viscerally resist is this idea of choosing a niche. And a niche or a target audience, they're the same thing, needs to be so specific that you know not only what industry sector or profession that your chosen target audience is, but you also need to know basically pretty much down to job title. And that's the point at which coaches start to feel claustrophobic and panicky and like, but if I do that, what about the rest of the world? What about the other 8 billion people that I could be helping? So it's about language. The reason that we need to be this specific, I do this because this is the what, this is the who, and where they intersect, which I call the intersection, which is the name of my latest book. Where they intersect is where our potential clients sit. So they're in this industry sector or profession and they have this particular problem. So if we go back to the conversation that we were having about, all the different potential industry sectors or job titles that we could possibly have, and the potential issues that we could have, the one that we kind of landed on was, well, the legal profession, and the issue was emerging leaders. Now, I've had a couple of direct messages about this saying, well, emerging leaders exist across all sectors, industries, professions, that, emerging leaders are everywhere, and emerging leaders have the same problems, whichever sector they're in. It's always, I was good at doing the job and now I've been promoted to manage a team of people who used to be my peers, and now they're doing the doing and I'm managing them doing the doing. But actually, I was good at the doing and now I feel out of my depth. Full of imposter syndrome. I'm worried that my team think I'm too big for my boots. I'm worried that the person who's promoted me, my line manager, thinks I'm an idiot. That's the same across every single sector, and that's true. And so coaches have said to me, well, I work with emerging leaders, but I work with any emerging leaders. How are you going to find any emerging leaders? Now, the piece of information that coaches miss is that when we post on, let's say, LinkedIn, we feel like, well, I've put this on the internet, and now everybody can see that post. Everybody will see it. And the truth is, a tiny fraction of our connections see it. Now, I'm talking specifically about LinkedIn here. So they all work the same way, but I'm going to speak very specifically about LinkedIn. So a tiny section of the people that we are connected to will see our post. And depending on what they do, it depends on whether or not LinkedIn will syndicate it out to a wider audience. Now, most of us coaches are connected to hundreds and hundreds of other coaches because that's what we do. We find coaching, we think it's brilliant, we connect with everybody in our first cohort, and then everybody we meet at networking events, either virtual or in real life, and we connect, and we've got loads of coaches. The LinkedIn algorithm is an AI tool, and our job is to teach it what it needs to do. So teach it who we want to see our content. And the way it learns that is it looks at who are we connected with. So if we're connected with hundreds and hundreds of coaches and we're not connected with people who look like the potential clients that we want to work with, those potential clients won't see our content. So we have to consciously curate an audience. We have to disconnect from the majority of coaches that we're connected to. And if you're going, you don't have to disconnect from the people that actually, the ones you know, but the ones where you look and you think, I have no idea where I met that person, I don't really remember at all, then just disconnect from them. They don't get a notification to say that you don't want to be their friend anymore. They don't get anything. You just disconnect from them and start connecting with people who do look like the person at the intersection between the what and the who, because attention is one of the most valuable commodities in the 2020s. It's how LinkedIn makes its money. It's how all the social media platforms make their money, and Amazon, and this is the thing that everybody is selling now, and it is the most valuable commodity that we can have. And the not curating your audience is the reason why you don't get not just the reach, because coaches are very good at engaging with each other's posts, but that's teaching LinkedIn that you want other coaches to see your stuff, and we don't. Most of us don't want other coaches to see our stuff, or we don't mind them seeing it, but what we really want is to be focusing our energy and our efforts towards the kind of client that we want to work with. So that's a nod at how the algorithm works. Now, this idea of language and this idea of emerging leaders, and I know I keep saying this, and I know there is a penny drop moment, and I know that it doesn't happen particularly quickly. So if you're thinking, but this doesn't make sense, you are not alone. So until you know who they are, you don't know where they are. So if you're wanting to work with emerging leaders, which emerging leaders in particular? Now, the way that we choose, as I spoke about the other day, is we look at either our experience, our lived experience, or the people that we've had a front row seat to their lived experience, so parents or partners or siblings, or people, friends, people who you've seen living this experience. And the reason that you need to do that, and it's not just people who you vaguely know who've lived that experience, you need to be able to speak their language. And when I say their language, I mean their jargon. You need to be able to describe the problem that particular emerging leader is having in the same kind of language that they are describing it. Now, what I mean by that is, depending on which industry, sector, or profession you work in, depends on when the squeeze points are in your year, when things get stressful, how the rhythm of your life runs. So, for example, an emerging leader in a school has a different set of problems, and we'll talk about it differently than an emerging leader in the legal profession and an emerging leader in, let's say, emergency medicine. And I've used those very specifically because they are really quite different. So a teacher has the ebbs and flows of an academic year. They have pressure points when, the new school year, they have pressure points around exam time, the whole run up to Christmas, their life has a rhythm, and that rhythm is the academic year. Now, if you are knowledgeable about that, like, for example, our mentor, Helen Clare, who runs Menopause in Schools, she talks about how menopause impacts teachers in schools. Now, everyone who has a womb, if they live long enough, will go through menopause. Helen's lane that she's chosen because she speaks the language and she understands the rhythm of their life is education, specifically UK education. Could she talk to everybody? Anybody who's going through menopause? Yes, but it's too vague and woolly, and she can't curate an audience of anybody who is menopausal. Now, if we look at the lawyer, the emerging leader who's a lawyer, then they have a very definite rhythm of life. Their working hours tend to be, if we compare them with a teacher and an emergency medicine medic, they are more predictable. They might be very long, but they are kind of during the day. And I know nothing about the legal profession, so I'm not going to profess to know when the pinch points in their year is, etc., etc. But the way that they will describe, as in literally the language that they use to describe what's going on for them and the impact on them and the kind of work that their team is doing and the sorts of things that they are now managing will be different from the new school leader. And if we look at the emergency medic, they could be working nights in hospitals. That's a whole different rhythm of life and a whole different language and a whole different, how the kinds of people that they're managing and the kinds of jobs that they're doing. Being able to speak to that and demonstrate your knowledge and understanding of their work-life situation, as well as your empathy for the struggle that they're having, that working with you can resolve. That's good marketing. Curate an audience of people. First of all, choose your what, who. So the problem you want to work around and your sector, industry, or profession. Make sure it's one whose language you speak. Now, to be really specific, if you were in a room full of people in the sector, industry, or profession that you've chosen, and you were having a conversation, would you stand out as not being one of them? If you read their publications, would you be able to understand the connotations and the implications of what you're reading over and above just understanding the words? Do you understand what's going on in their world properly? Not just, oh, well, I've got a vague idea, but, do you speak their language? Would you be perceived as one of them? That's what you're looking for. And I know that one of the places that we resist so much is, but I can coach anyone. And that's absolutely true. But in order to coach someone, they have to have agreed to be coached. They have to have sat down agreed to pay a professional rate, sat down in front of you and be willing to be coached. And that process of getting somebody from being a person to being somebody who's gone, I know you know what I'm struggling with, and therefore I would like you to coach me. That's a big piece of work. And I deliver webinars often to groups of coaches from coach training organizations and from ICF chapters and the MCC groups. And one of the comments that's often made is, oh, well, I was told I'm a better coach if I don't know anything about their knowledge and experience. Now, if you're going to coach other people's clients, that's an okay belief to hold. If, however, you want to find your own clients, and even though we know we don't need to know anything about their situation to be able to coach them, they want to feel understood. They want to know that you get it before they're going to be willing to part with a professional sum to work with you. And so when it comes to coaching and leaving your knowledge and experience at the door, well, that's about you being a professional coach. That's about you being able to step out of the kind of client acquisition, business development side of your business and into the coaching side of your business, and to allow them to have the coaching conversation that they need and not the one that you want to impose upon them. We're coaches, we don't do that. So two sides of scale, two completely different skill sets. Over here, it is absolutely about your knowledge, experience, ability to speak their language, ability to describe the problem that they've got that is keeping them awake at night, that working with you can resolve. And when they become your client, then it's about letting go of that and allowing them to have the coaching experience that will be best for them. I can feel that there are a lot of questions. Please feel free to either leave your questions in the comments underneath this live stream, or send me a message, send me a direct message, DM on LinkedIn or on TikTok, or a message on Messenger if you're on Facebook.